should any of you really be interested in how it must feel to be here, I refer you to your last examination week and the last day of it. After some strenuous previous days and some perhaps all night or most of the night preparation, when you show up to this fellow's office or room who wants to look sympathetic but finds it hard, I hopefully and prayerfully solicit your sympathy and your prayerfulness, knowing that anything I may say will be useful to the degree that you are prepared and willing to consider it and to let the Spirit motivate you as well as me. I observed some of these girls notice me put a cough drop in my mouth just before things got underway. And I thought of the stake conference in St. George where a wonderful young counselor in the presidency stood up and in his address noted that the morning session had seen me do the same thing. And he expected when I got up to speak that afternoon I'd use another cough drop. He said it reminded him of a friend of his who had a fine reputation for speaking, part of which was dependent upon or related to his good sense in stopping from speaking soon enough. And not for a time did it turn out or turn up why he was so sensible. And then someone discovered that before each speech he would put part of a white lifesaver in the corner of his mouth, and as it dissolved, he gauged his time, and when it was gone, he was through. Perhaps they knew the story and were hopeful this morning. I better tell you the rest of it, though. One day he got up to speak, so it is said, and spoke his usual time, and then some, and quite a bit more some, and finally he and the congregation, mutually distressed over it, were grateful to see him almost flee the pulpit, sit down, surreptitiously reach into his mouth, extract an object, look at it carefully, breathe a mixed sigh, and say, "Darn, no wonder the dang thing's a button." In the terminology today, I'm clean this morning. This is a cough drop, medicated, and I trust all will be well. On a great hill in the Dakotas, an artist has carved 4 faces. Many of you have seen them, either in fact or in picture. It is not of them that I would speak, but of a statement made about them by the chief scout executive of the nation in that day, who said, "These men were participating citizens." Until 4 o'clock yesterday morning, I had no real idea what I might say to you this morning. At about 3:45, I was called from the Kirkham home to the bedside of my close and dear associate, whom you have frequently and wonderfully honored here. He was gone when I arrived, but I had the joy of sitting through the night with these good folks whom I have learned to love and who have spent their lives with their husband and father. 54 long years of marriage. This is not going to be a eulogy of Oscar Kirkham this morning, nor of Adam Benyon, another loved and departed friend, benefactor of this university and great servant of God. Rather, I would seek to extract from their example and the experience also of all the men in all time who have contributed meaningfully to the world. Some measure of the program or standard of approach they made to living, which equipped them to do what they did. I speak not alone of the great ones, the prophets of the Master, of Abraham Lincoln and others who in other particularly effective causes did so much, nor alone of the great men whom I have mentioned this morning and with whose passing I am, of course, touched. But I speak of the ordinary, simple folk in the best meaning of those terms, who have contributed effectively and lived meaningfully in this world, who have been what James West effectively said, participating citizens. And I mention it, of course, because I would hope that out of that which is said there may come some kind of personal responsiveness in your souls to the possibilities in you also to contribute meaningfully and impressively and fruitfully, constructively to this great world which so desperately needs the contribution you can make, if you will. When you think of the lives of these men, and one might take any one of them and follow it through, though I will not, there are certain elements that seem universally true. I would start with the attitude they had toward life and people and truth. An attitude that somehow made them able, through intelligence and inspiration and faith, to discover which things in this world really matter, really mean something, and then to ally themselves, to identify themselves effectively with good and decent and important causes, to be willing fully to identify themselves like men all the way with the truth they had discovered and the causes they knew to be good. There is another element in each instance. Once knowing that which is good, each has been willing to pay the price of preparation. Most of them started from what could not really be thought advantageous beginnings. Yet each paid the price in his own way, not all the time in colleges, but through earnest personal effort to get ready to serve the cause they had discovered and identified themselves with. And in their preparation took time to begin to give. One of the great men of our day said of a certain person whom he was writing about, "It is remarkable how early in life a man's true interests often manifest themselves." And he spoke of the cause of the Lord in the life of this particular individual. In the preparation and in the contemporary and ensuing performance, work and service, there is a universal element in the lives of all these participating citizens. And though there are many other elements, and you will realize I could but touch upon a few, there seemingly in each life is the willingness further, knowing the cause and identifying self with it and preparing to serve it and then giving to it. There is also the willingness to stand steady in the face of criticism, of opposition, indifference, the smug and smiling attitude of the superior in their own eyes. In spite of all the pressures the world and its objectives and enticements have brought to bear, they've been willing and able somehow, by and large, to stand steady for what they knew was good. Now, I could not here describe any perfect man, save the Lord himself. And I suppose you understand that I don't talk from the ivory tower and have never so assumed, but from the level of my own life, which is like the level of your lives, touched with regrets, ignorance, limitation, sorrow over some things I don't like to remember, and so forth. But as I think of you, in terms of Oscar Ammon Kirkham or Adam S. Benyon or Lincoln or the countless many participating citizens, I feel absolutely certain that you have the capacity to do what has been done, and I repeat, the world desperately needs you. As to causes and identifying self with them, William James once said, "The greatest use of a life is to spend it on something that outlasts it." And Edmund Burke said, "All that is needed in this world for the forces of unrighteousness to win is for enough good men to do nothing." May I suggest to you that in recognizing the great cause which we here mutually represent, the cause of Christ, of the Lord on the earth, we, if we will identify ourselves with it, get in all the way, make proper preparations, serve it, and endure in it, will have found the most important cause and opportunity in this world. And we should get in all the way, in faith, in thought, in action, in word. We should have the courage to stand up and recognize who we are and what we are allied to, and be effective representatives of the cause. I can't forbear saying that what the church and the world really needs are not artful, clever, cynical, conditional, reservational Latter-day Saints, not the doughty, fierce warriors of the conference table who, without the weight of the church on their backs, find it easy to be critical and make decisions and engineer great changes. What the church needs, in my humble opinion, is more of those who are willing to be bishops' counselors and ward clerks and senior Aaronic advisors and primary teachers and ward teachers, who, in other words, show up and do the job. I have infinitely more respect for one who lives the life of the gospel, however limited his capacity may be to portray it, than for him whose capacity permits an effective understanding but who will not show up to help. I recall no experience in my life of hearing an honest tithe payer who over a long period of time has made his contribution worrying too seriously about where the money went. And I have yet to find a regular, consistent churchgoer who thought it dull and unworthy of his time. And in all honesty, I must say that I have never yet found one who went down to the welfare farm consistently who had trouble being converted to the welfare program. And I have never heard a bishop really criticize decisions by the brethren because he has the burden of some himself. Maybe in a word it might be said, and I don't remember who said it, they who have free seats at the play hiss first. The cause to which we are committed is the greatest cause in the universe. It is the cause of the Lord on the earth. to cooperate with him in bringing to pass the immortality and eternal life of men. There is no greater cause. Now, as to preparation, you are here as part of a conscious or unconscious desire and understanding as concerns preparation. The Lord has given us a magnificent suggestion about how real preparation may be made when, as recorded in the 90th section of the Doctrine and Covenants, he said, "Search diligently, pray always, and be believing, and all things shall work together for your good, if ye walk uprightly, and remember the covenants wherewith ye have covenanted one with another." As to preparation, may I say to you that Adam Benyon, for instance, came from a little home in Taylorsville where his father had departed this world before his second birthday. He had almost nothing to inspire any real possibility of earthly contribution and participation. Yet he made it to Columbia and the University of California, and through them into many important places. Oscar Kirkham was born in Lehigh, and I'm sure no one would want to simulate or repeat his experience. He lost his mother as a little boy. I don't think the prospects were overwhelming for his contribution if one looked at his beginnings without a sense of such things. But from Lehigh, he went to Columbia and to Munich and Heidelberg. All I'd say about that this morning is this: if, when your preparation is made, in terms of your time and your opportunities in the world as you found it, you can measure a distance, and I'm not talking about miles, equivalent from Taylorsville to Columbia or Lehigh to Heidelberg, then you will have paid the price in this particular regard of preparation. As to prayer, I can only think of the great mission president whom I rode with and learned from and learned to love. He had been through the 8th grade in school and yet had a sense of education and light that one seldom finds. He told me about a nephew of his, a scientist of effective importance in the developments of our time, still very young, who'd come to him, stayed for a while in the home of this mission president prior to his call, and had been observed to have changed in some of his personal habits from the early days of the association in the family. He didn't pray anymore, and one day his Uncle Harold asked him why before he left. His answer was, "Well, Uncle Harold, the way I've come to look at it, the Lord blessed me with an intellect, with capacities and understanding, and I expect that He thinks I'll use them to accomplish some good in the world, and that I shouldn't really bother Him so much." Interesting explanation for a normal, in the sense of this man and his feeling, phenomena. The answer, though, I thought was good. Said this humble man with 8 years of education, "Tell you, John, the one thing in life I ever feel triumphant about is when my educated children, all of them far more intelligent than their father, and with college degrees to demonstrate it, come to me and say, 'Dad, what makes the pump do this?' Or, 'Dad, what did you do with us when we were little? I can't teach this child.' Or in some way invites me to participate in his life or their lives, intelligent and educated as they are. You know, I really feel a triumph in my soul when my children come to me to talk over the things they're doing. Do you think, smart as you are, that your Father in heaven might possibly feel the same? There is the attitude of believing. If you want to remember and feel good about your faith and its foundations and gain strength to do what has to be done, then read again the story of Naaman out of the book of Kings, which I won't repeat, save to remind you that he was a very self-sufficient and effective man. He was a leader of armies and respected widely. And when he went to a prophet and the prophet asked some rather humble thing of him, his response was to turn away angry, but reminded that if he had been asked to do some great and sterling thing, he'd have done it. Thinking it over, he went back and dipped 7 times in the Jordan, do you remember? And came up clean, not because the Jordan had any curative properties, but because he had humbled himself and relied upon the goodness and mercy of God. In your preparations, if you will search diligently, pray always, be believing, then walk uprightly and make and remember the sacred covenants the church makes available to you through the revelations of God, I think you'll be ready. May we talk a minute about the performance, the work, the service the Lord requires. He's asked us to work anxiously for Him. When Abraham Lincoln found his cause, he is reported to have said early in his life, "When I hit that thing, I'll hit it hard." When the Lord, through the prophet, said to James Coville, in response to Coville's agreement and affirmative statement to do anything the Lord wanted him to do, when the Lord said through the prophet to this man who had so committed himself, "Son, I want you to go on a mission to the Ohio," he said, "But Lord, I wanted to go to the eastern countries." And the Lord said, "The call's to Ohio." He said, "But Lord, we have a family tradition." Perhaps he said that. Or, "There is some other compelling reason why I have to go to the eastern countries." The Lord said, "Thou art not called to go to the eastern countries. Thou art called to go to the Ohio." Read the opening words of the headnote to section 40. Let me read them. "As James Coville rejected the word of the Lord and returned to his former principles and people, the Lord gave another revelation in which it was noted that his great potential for participation in the kingdom had now been lost to him." Let me be very specific as I move on. Touring a mission which included the state of Florida, I went into a district conference and in consultation with the local district president and the mission president set up a program for that day's activities. The district president said, "We would like to hear from this young lady." She was 16. He named her, and I didn't ask why, but because I'm very interested in getting the young people to participate under such circumstances, I was very pleased and said, "Of course, let's do it." He introduced her about like this. I've forgotten her name. Call her Barbara. This morning, or not this morning, I think it was the last Sunday morning, he said, after Sunday school, I called Barbara into the office and gave her the job of district ERA subscription officer. I asked her to be the director of the drive. When it came time for sacrament meeting in the evening, she came up to me and said, "President, I'm through. And I said to her, what do you mean you're through, Barbara? You shouldn't quit before you start. I know you have the capacity to do this, and I'm certain it'll require a lot of effort, but you can do it. And she said, no, you don't understand. I'm through. Well, he tried again. He didn't understand. Finally, she had to stop him and said, no, President, I've finished. He said, what do you mean, finished? We have a quota of 36 subscriptions. Won't you try? She said, no, I've done it. I have 36 subscriptions. They're here. He said, you mean between this morning and now? She said, yes, as soon as Sunday school was over, Daddy took me in the car, and we've been all over the district. We have them. Here they are. Here's the money. You know, from then till now, periodically, when I hear certain stories and think certain thoughts, I wonder how I or you might have responded. Gone home to dinner and said, guess what he's hung on me now? And you'd be so upset you could hardly sleep through the afternoon. And then you'd be... Then maybe you'd sit bothered a little while in sacrament meeting, and next Sunday when you saw the president, you'd worry a little, but that'd wear off. And not until it was due date, and somebody asked you why not, somewhat tenuously and a little fearfully, have you, and if not, why not, would you really get concerned? Maybe. I don't suppose you'd really do this. But what a lesson from a 16-year-old about performing. And I want to tell you the other outstanding example that I've recently found. I went to a certain stake in the state of Utah, which had the most outstanding elders quorum participation on the record that I'd seen. And I asked the stake president to invite the three men presiding over that quorum to give a talk, each for 5 minutes, on the specific subject, my specific duties in the presidency of this quorum and what I'm doing about it. I thought I and the others would learn something. The president of the quorum stood up, a very humble man, reactivated. He was an art professor at a certain university. He had not had much church experience, but he told how they had approached the assignment of being president of an elders quorum. They had divided the whole quorum into 4 districts. The 3 officers and their secretary had each taken one district, and every month for 3 months they had visited the men in their district. Then they had moved to the next and visited each man in that district, so that at the end of the year, every man in the quorum had been visited 12 times by members of his quorum presidency. Personally, whether he was showing up or not, for a few minutes of personal interview. They had, he said, had to work in the beginning 4 nights a week. They had worked it down to 3, then 2, but to get an elders quorum functioning outside the Brigham Young University stake, 80 or 90%, they had still to put in 2 full nights of effort. When he sat down, I turned to the stake president and said, which I shouldn't have done, almost out loud, there's the answer. He said, not yet. The first counselor stood up and told the story of the church service committee, of which he was chairman, of their projects, their temple excursions, their socials, their efforts to get the brethren taught in cottage meetings. He had a wonderful grasp of what his specific duties were and a tremendous enthusiasm. He was a young salesman. When he sat down, I said, the president of the stake, what a team. And he said, not yet. And then a young man stood up who looked like and talked like what I imagine Abraham Lincoln did. He was 20 years old, father of 2 children, a farmer. These were his exact words. I haven't forgotten them. He said, when the president of this stake came to me and asked me to be second counselor in this quorum of elders, I said, who are the others? He said, Dr. So-and-so and Brother So-and-so. And I said, I don't know those fellers very well. Do they intend to succeed, or are they going to fail? And the president said to me, we assume they're going to succeed. And I said, don't assume it, ask them. If they intend to succeed, I'd like the job. But I don't intend to get mixed up with an outfit that's going to fail from the beginning. His job as second counselor was to be chairman of the fact-finding and reporting committee. He knew all there was to know, I think, about every man in that whole quorum. He knew their birth dates, their children, their birth dates, their wedding anniversaries. He even said, and I take it with 100% credibility after listening to him and feeling his spirit, that he knew about how much each man would consume of edibles under given circumstances. He said if we need 10 gallons, we don't order 15 or 8. We order 11 and have a little over. If we need 5 dozen hot dogs, we get a little over, but not 15 dozen or 2.5. Our job, he said, is to provide the basis for the working of this presidency. And I wasn't going to tell you till this second, but I'm going to do it. What he said that caused me to guffaw, have you ever done it out loud and been alone in a crowd? I did. I quit in a hurry, as you would. I almost sang the second verse to "Oh, Say What Is Truth" this morning. Or whatever. No, it was a song that started. Wonderful music. He said this to conclude. And this is what made me laugh, but not the others. They smiled pleasantly, but they knew him. And it didn't make them laugh. He said, these 2 men, he named them, are the finest men I know, and they're the best elders presidency in the world. And I don't love anybody better than I do them. They're successful priesthood leaders, and the reason they are is me. This is why I guffawed all alone. Now to conclude, to find out right now what's important in this world, to identify yourself with it all the way, to get in, stand up, say what you represent, and be there, to be willing and conscious of the need for preparation, to pay the price, to show up and function, to perform, and then to endure. Because there is always opposition. I could tell you something about that. Out of Adam Benyon's life, or Oscar Kirkham's, or the Savior's, or the prophets, or of any other human being who ever did anything, and did it with all their heart. There is criticism and indifference and smugness and the uplifted eye and the attitude of superiority. But I repeat, I have all the respect in the world, infinitely much respect, for him or her who shows up to do it because of the faith and conviction of their souls. So much more so than for him who may understand all about it and be able to recite it systematically, but who does not show up. What'll happen if you do? Let me just introduce you to these 2 ideas and I'm through. This came from Galesburg, Illinois, soon after the war. Dear sirs, I am writing this letter in accordance with my will and a desire, which was the result of a few hours in an army hospital. There I met a soldier who was a Mormon, became interested in his religion. Through him I have received words that have lived. Then he tells about what's happened since. I have a great desire burning within my heart to learn of the Mormon religion, even to partake of it. This Mormon soldier had something far greater than any other man I ever met. How can I become a Mormon, he asks. And in a sense, more impressive than that is this little letter with which I conclude, from Formosa, addressed to President McKay. It came to the Bureau of Information, and I first read it and have been privileged to keep it. This man tells about his life. He has been a Confucianist, a Taoist, a Buddhist, a Protestant, and a Catholic, and says this is all there is here to be in Formosa. But he gets to this, and I hope it will ring in your ears today, and I would wish all your life as it has in mine. I am a rural settler I'll read it just as he's written it. Most of my relatives were farmers, so I recall to my mind some Mormon neighbor. He is Mormon church devotee, telling the love of God, the faith, and the various works he intended to do for brethren when I was young. 23 years have elapsed since then, but the impression is so deep in memory. Who 23 years ago had the faith, the courage, the inspiration in Formosa among these people to tell a neighbor of the love of God and the works he intended to do? Some participating citizen. God help you to be. The church will live without you if you aren't, without me or any other man. But you can bless it and its people so, and this world, if you will be participating citizens. I pray that you may, in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.